It would usually be bustling with commuters at this time of morning, but an extension of the Lunar New Year holidays due to the coronavirus outbreak has cleared the streets of most of its 25 million people.
There's a disturbing mystery unfolding in China, officially the world's second most populous country. You'd expect packed streets and crowds everywhere, but instead, there's silence.
Which is on line one of the busiest subway stations. Not one single person getting off the train, and nobody getting on.
People are vanishing. Once busy cities now feel empty. Beggars have disappeared. Jobs are drying up, and even highly educated citizens are turning to street vending just to survive. It's led many to question, was China's population figure exaggerated to project power to the world? Join us as we uncover the strange and troubling truths behind what's really happening in China. The Unsolved Mystery in China. Contrary to the popular belief that China is the most populated country, with over 1.4 billion people, recent videos paint a different picture. You'd expect crowded streets and bustling cities, but instead, footage of eerily empty places has been circulating online, sparking questions about where all the people are. One viral video in particular shows a young woman walking through a massive shopping mall in Shanghai. She pans her phone across empty hallways and deserted food courts. Everyone keeps saying, "Come to Shanghai and chase your dreams," she says. But look around, not a soul in sight. Food stalls set up for crowds that never came. It feels like a ghost town. And it's not just Shanghai. Similar videos have been coming out of Beijing, Chengdu, and other major cities. Streets that used to be packed from morning to night now feel like movie sets after filming has ended.
A lot of empty streets here, and everybody who is outside, pretty much everybody I've seen.
The first theory people jumped to was the economy. It's no secret that China's growth has slowed. Life in the big cities has gotten expensive, and a lot of workers, especially younger ones, have packed their bags and gone back home to their towns or villages. Makes sense, right? But then the story took a twist. People in those smaller towns and rural areas started posting videos too. And guess what? Same thing. Empty streets, boarded up houses. Nobody is hanging out in the markets. If people left the cities and went back to their villages, then where did they all go? That question has been bouncing around the internet for months now, and it's starting to feel like a mystery nobody wants to solve. Then came a post from someone who claimed they had connections inside the police system. They said that the actual number of people officially registered in China is only about 760 million. Compare that to the common belief that the population is over 1.4 billion. That's a jaw-dropping gap, nearly 500 million people unaccounted for. Another person shared a screenshot supposedly from the Ministry of Public Security. It showed that the number of people with national ID cards was just over 770 million. They also pointed out that birth records in past years showed around 8.9 million newborns, which was nearly 2 million less than what the government's main statistics agency had reported. So either someone's making mistakes or something's being hidden. Of course, it's hard to confirm anything. China's government controls most of the public data and isn't exactly known for being transparent when things look bad. Then there's the part of the story that really stings: the beggars. Before the pandemic, homeless people were everywhere in China's cities, sitting by the roadside, asking for change outside subway stations, sleeping near public parks. But now, they're gone too, vanished. This is the part that's hardest to explain. With the economy struggling, unemployment rising, and small businesses shutting down left and right, you'd expect more people falling into poverty. But that's not what people are seeing. Not only have new beggars not appeared, many of the ones who used to be there are just missing.
This on my left is the silk market, where a lot of foreigners come and do their shopping. It's also being closed.
China is believed to have around 300 million homeless people. The government claims it's helping them. They say there are over 1,500 city-run rescue stations, and that in 2023, they spent more than 250 billion yuan supporting poor and vulnerable citizens. But people living on the streets say they haven't seen a dime of that help. And local authorities? Many seem more concerned about appearances than assistance. Reports suggest that beggars are being pushed out of public view so that cities look cleaner and more prosperous. especially when photos and videos are shared internationally. It's all part of a campaign, some say, to maintain the image that China is strong and thriving, even if the truth is more complicated. Here's the bigger picture. China's population is getting older and its birth rate is dropping fast. The thing that once gave China a massive global edge, millions of young working-age citizens, is fading. And no matter how much the government denies it, people are starting to feel it everywhere they look. The cities are quieter, villages are emptier, people are unsure, uneasy, and maybe most chilling of all, no one can say for sure what's really going on or where everyone went. The dire situation in China. Underneath the bridges of Guangzhou, bridges that carry traffic, wealth, and city dreams, people sleep, in tents, on thin mats, under plastic sheets flapping in the wind. These aren't just wanderers or addicts. Some are students, others work food delivery jobs. A few still dress like they have office meetings to attend, but at night they go back to nothing. No rent, no water bills, no doors. In Shanghai, it's the same story. Different faces, same situation. A man filmed a stretch of concrete underpass. It was lined with clotheslines, old blankets, and tiny gas burners. He didn't raise his voice or plead. He just said quietly, "This is what it's come to." The economy's breaking, but no one wants to say it. If you scroll through social media, you'll see influencers in shiny cars, buying imported handbags, filming with ring lights. It's a filtered fantasy. Outside that, there's a different kind of city, one that rarely makes it into the frame. In Wuhan, someone walked the streets at 3 in the morning. There were people already awake, sitting on sidewalks with their tools and helmets, waiting for work.
We are gonna come across a group of youths who do daily paid jobs for a living.
They're not sleeping, the man behind the camera says. They're waiting to be picked for day jobs. It's survival. A young guy is asked how much he earns for working all night. 180 yuan, he says. That's barely $25. He shrugs. But I pay rent. Breakfast costs 2 yuan. He doesn't complain, just states the facts, like a man trying not to feel too much about it. Then there's Shenzhen, a city of speed, tech, and money. But go to Longhua bus station, and you'll meet the Sanhe masters. That's what people call them, half joking, half resigned. They're everywhere near the Sanhe talent market. You'll see them crouched by the sidewalk, faces sunburned, shoes worn through. Most of them don't carry ID cards anymore. Some don't even remember their last real address. They live on odd jobs. Paint a fence today, unload a truck tomorrow. If they've got a few yuan, they check into rooms that cost less than 5. When they don't, they find a spot in front of a closed shop and wait for morning. Some sell things, used cables, old phones, cracked power banks. You can buy a meal here for 5 yuan, a cigarette for 1. If they're really desperate, some even try to sell their real name verified accounts. No shame left, just hunger. This place has become its own kind of marketplace, not for the rich, not for tourists, but for the forgotten. It didn't start like this. Most of them came to Shenzhen with plans, hope even. But somewhere along the way they got tricked, or broke, or sick, and the system didn't catch them. Some of these masters haven't eaten a full meal in 2 days. Some haven't worked all week. Still, they show up at sunrise to try again. Most are young now, born after the year 2000. You'd think they'd be starting companies, traveling, but they're here, wandering around a bus station with their lives in plastic bags, and yet even here people laugh, joke, fall in love. There's a rumor that if you want a loyal boyfriend, you can find one at Longhua. Just give him food and a bed, someone said, and he'll stay. Better than those flaky guys online. It's dark humor, but it's real. A young man named Xiao Jiang from a small town in Sichuan said it best. You can't blame them. This is what happens when the rich get richer and the rest get nothing. It's a cycle. It won't stop. You need to be physically strong to live like this, to starve, to work when you can, to be okay with disappearing. There are all kinds of people here. Couples, older men, teenagers. Some don't talk much. Some try to help each other. But they're all stuck in the same loop. Wake up, search for work, eat if lucky, and find a safe place to sleep. Their dreams didn't die. They just got priced out. So next time you walk through one of China's sparkling cities, past the malls and subways and neon, look closer. There might be a tent tucked in a shadow, a face behind a railing, a life paused under a bridge. They didn't choose this life, but somehow they're still surviving it. Mysterious disappearances of influencers and journalists. There's a strange silence hanging over parts of China. And it's not just the empty streets or abandoned buildings, it's the sudden vanishing of voices that once spoke out. Over the past few years, several journalists, vloggers, and online influencers have simply disappeared. Not because they were unpopular or irrelevant, but because they were saying things someone didn't want to be heard. One of such cases is that of Fang Bin, a man from Wuhan who became known around the world in early 2020. As the coronavirus outbreak first spread through China, Fang started uploading videos showing overcrowded hospitals, body bags, and chaotic scenes the state media wasn't talking about.
After continually posting videos and images for weeks, showing a health system struggling to cope with the coronavirus.
These videos went viral almost instantly, shocking viewers inside and outside China. But Fang's bravery came at a price. After just a few weeks of documenting what he saw, he vanished. For over 2 years, no one knew where he was. Some thought he was dead. In early 2023, news quietly surfaced that he had been released from prison, but he still hasn't spoken publicly. It's like the system wiped his voice clean. Then there's Chen Qiushi, a lawyer turned citizen journalist who also traveled to Wuhan during the early stages of the pandemic. He recorded emotional, first-hand accounts of what was really going on.
In front of me is the virus, and behind me is the legal and administrative power of China. As long as I live in this city, I will continue to report.
Interviewing scared residents, showing real hospital conditions, and questioning the official narrative. Chen's videos were raw, honest, and quickly gained attention. And just like Fang Bin, he went missing. For months, his social media accounts went dark, and nobody could reach him. His friends feared the worst. Eventually, the government said he was under quarantine, but it didn't explain why his phone was off and why his family wasn't allowed to talk to him. By the time he reappeared almost 2 years later, he looked thin and tired, and he avoided saying anything that could stir trouble. Whatever happened during that time clearly left a mark. Another name that stands out is Li Zehua, a young former state TV reporter who, ironically, used to work for the government's media machine. When the outbreak began, Li quit his job and decided to report independently. He drove to Wuhan, just like Fang and Chen, and started showing the world the reality behind the lockdowns.
He visited many places in Wuhan where the CCP virus outbreak started and hosted several live streams during visits.
He filmed everything, from police checkpoints to deserted highways. But one day, during a live stream, viewers watched as Li suddenly panicked. He was being followed. He ended the stream and later disappeared. The silence lasted for nearly 2 months. When he finally reappeared, he released a short video explaining that he had been detained and put into quarantine. He smiled in the video, but it felt forced, like someone was watching him from behind the camera.
Li Zehua spoke out publicly on social media and shared about his arrest and his experience being quarantined.
Since then, he's stayed low-key and hasn't done any more independent reporting. These disappearances aren't random. Each of these men had one thing in common. They were telling a different story than the one being shown on state TV. And they weren't alone. In total, more than a dozen whistleblowers, citizen journalists, and online commentators either vanished, got arrested, or were silenced during the peak of the outbreak. So when we ask, where did everyone go? The influencers, the reporters, the everyday people with a voice, the answer isn't always clear. But one thing is certain, their absence isn't natural. It's forced. And in the places where they once stood, there's nothing left but silence. Strict lockdowns that turned cities into prisons. Back in early 2020, something happened in China that the world had never seen before. Not at this scale, not this extreme. The government didn't just tell people to stay home. It locked down entire cities with steel, cement, and fear. What began as a health response slowly turned into something that felt more like a controlled prison system, with citizens trapped inside their own homes. Wuhan was the first city to fall silent. Overnight, a place filled with traffic, markets, and families turned into a ghost town. But this wasn't just people choosing to stay indoors. Authorities welded apartment doors shut. In some buildings, the exits were sealed with metal bars. Families with elderly members or sick children had no way out. If you needed food, it was brought to your doorstep, if you were lucky. If you needed help, There was no one to call. No one was allowed to move, and if you did, drones would fly overhead and shout at you through loudspeakers, "Return home immediately." And it didn't stop in Wuhan. The same model rolled out across cities like Shanghai, Guangzhou, Chengdu, and more. People were told it was for their own safety, but the scenes looked like something out of a science fiction nightmare. Military trucks patrolled the streets. Police in hazmat suits guarded entrances to neighborhoods. In some places, residents weren't allowed to leave their apartment complexes for weeks, not even to get groceries or fresh air.
Residents have been barricaded into their homes, allowed out only for COVID testing.
One woman in Xi'an posted online that her father was having a heart attack, but the local COVID officials refused to open the gates. He died waiting for help that never came. Another family in Shanghai said they were running out of food, but when they tried to step outside, they were threatened with arrest. And these weren't isolated stories. There were thousands like them. The internet was flooded with cries for help, but many of those posts were quickly deleted. People's accounts were shut down. It was as if their voices were being erased in real time. Even the sound of daily life disappeared. No traffic, no street vendors, no laughter from children. Just sirens, drones, and the occasional government message blasting through speakers mounted on buildings. In some areas, robotic dogs with speakers strapped to their backs walked around broadcasting orders to stay inside.
Residents aren't allowed to walk their dogs. The only canines permitted on city streets are robots.
It didn't feel like a health emergency anymore. It felt like surveillance mixed with punishment. And while other countries were loosening restrictions by late 2021, parts of China were doubling down. In places like Shanghai, strict lockdowns were reintroduced again and again, sometimes over just a handful of cases. Entire apartment blocks with thousands of residents were locked down because of a single positive test. People were dragged from their homes and sent to quarantine centers, even if they weren't sick. One of the most shocking images came from a drone video that went viral. It showed a long row of white quarantine tents stretching across a cold gray field, hundreds of them lined up like prison barracks. Inside each one were people who had tested positive or had come in contact with someone who did. There was no privacy, barely any heating, and no clear answer on when they'd be released. These were ordinary citizens, children, elderly, mothers, students, all treated like criminals for simply being at the wrong place at the wrong time. The lockdowns didn't just trap people physically, they crushed them mentally. Depression, anxiety, and stress levels soared. Some residents in high-rise buildings were caught on camera screaming out of their windows just to feel heard.
But despite the strain on residents, China vows it will maintain its zero COVID policy.
Others tied white cloths outside their balconies as a silent cry for help. In some heartbreaking cases, people even jumped to their deaths, unable to cope with the endless isolation. By the time restrictions began to ease in late 2022, something had changed. It wasn't just that people were tired, it was that something inside them had broken. The trust, the community, the sense of safety, gone. The silence that lingered after the lockdowns wasn't just about the streets, it was inside the people too. So when we talk about the deadly silence that looms over China, we can't ignore what happened during those years of lockdown. Millions weren't just kept inside. They were cut off from the world, from each other, and from hope. Their cities didn't just fall quiet, they were silenced by force. Falling birth rates and a shrinking youth population. China is facing a population crisis, and it's one the government can't hide anymore. For years, the country pushed a one-child policy, believing it was the best way to control the population and boost the economy.
In order to try and help encourage the birth rate, we also saw, for example, local governments trying to combat this, rolling out measures to encourage people.
Families were forced to make painful choices. Some faced fines. Others were pressured into abortions. The message was clear. One child was enough. But now, decades later, the result is haunting.
It now stands as a stark warning about the disastrous economic consequences of the one-child policy.
There just aren't enough young people to keep the country alive and moving. In recent years, the birth rate has dropped to its lowest point in recorded history. In 2023, China saw fewer than 9 million births. That's the smallest number in over 60 years. To put it simply, more people are dying than being born.
For the first time in more than 60 years, China's population has fallen. This could indicate the possible start of a long-term decline.
And even in places like Beijing or Shanghai, where skyscrapers still rise and traffic still flows, the signs are showing. Kindergartens are closing. Toy stores are going out of business. Maternity wards are merging or shutting down. But the issue runs deeper than just numbers. Young couples are choosing not to have kids, not because they can't, but because they don't want to. The cost of raising a child in modern China is overwhelming. From housing prices to school fees to medical bills, it's simply too expensive. And with job competition rising, many young people are choosing careers, freedom, or even solitude over starting a family. The pressure to succeed, own a home, and provide a stable life is too much. For many, having a child feels like a trap, not a blessing. This drop in births is hitting rural areas even harder. In the countryside, most of the young have already left. They've moved to the cities looking for work or a better life. The ones left behind are aging parents and lonely grandparents. Some villages have become ghost towns, empty homes, overgrown paths, and silence where there used to be laughter.
Its gardens have been taken over by farmers herding goats into makeshift pens. The abandoned homes are a testament to a property crisis long in the making.
Schools close not because they're unsafe, but because there are no students. Even local doctors and shopkeepers are disappearing because there's no one left to serve. The government knows this is a ticking time bomb. They've tried everything to reverse it. First, they ended the one-child policy, then moved to allow 2, then even 3 children per family. They've offered cash bonuses, extended maternity leave, even housing discounts for parents. But nothing is working. The damage was already done, and now people's attitudes have changed. You can't just flip a switch and expect a baby boom. What's even more alarming is the long-term impact. With fewer young people, there are fewer workers, fewer taxpayers, and fewer caretakers for the elderly. The economy is starting to feel the pressure. Factories are struggling to hire. Hospitals are packed with aging patients, while nursing homes are filling up fast. Some economists believe that in the next few decades, China could lose hundreds of millions from its workforce. That's not just a slowdown, that's collapse-level territory. So when we ask, where are the people? Sometimes the answer isn't that they left. It's that they never arrived in the first place. And that absence is shaping China's future in ways no one can ignore anymore. Trump leaks Xi Jinping's secret. U.S. President Donald Trump recently claimed that a new, very strong trade agreement is being planned with China. According to him, China has agreed to open trade and other sectors to the U.S. But beneath this announcement, some are interpreting deeper signals, particularly about the current state of Xi Jinping's authority. Commentators like Tang Jingyuan argue that Xi's authoritarian leadership style and policy decisions have accelerated China's ongoing economic troubles. Trump's optimism, they suggest, could indicate more than just diplomacy.
To me, number one, because we have to keep people safe. Most importantly, we have to keep people safe. But the economy is certainly, we have to bring the job.
It may reflect a shift in the balance of power within the Chinese Communist Party, CCP. One notable change is in the Chinese delegation leading trade negotiations. Key figures include Vice Premier He Lifeng, Vice Finance Minister Liao Min, Vice Commerce Minister and International Trade Representative Li Chenggang, and Vice Public Security Minister Xu Datong. Importantly, these individuals are not known to be part of Xi's close political circle.
For China, for the world, is that the resource constraints from within would also constrain the Chinese ambition.
Li Chenggang recently replaced Wang Shouwen, a known Xi ally, raising questions about internal reshuffling. Analysts like commentator Li Dao suggest these negotiations may be backed by party elders who do not align with Xi. Some even point to Wen Jiabao, a former premier, as playing a behind-the-scenes role. This speculation is further fueled by persistent, though unconfirmed, rumors that Xi suffered a stroke after the third plenary session. Rumors that have coincided with signs of diminished control over military and political appointments. Several of Xi's top military allies, including Rocket Force Commander Wang Hobin, CMC Political Department Director Miao Hua, and CMC Vice Chairman He Weidong, are reportedly under investigation or have disappeared from public view. Observers note that these developments represent a significant loss of influence over the armed forces. Party insiders claim that the CCP's internal leadership has shifted toward three senior figures born in 1942, Hu Jintao, Wen Jiabao, and Hua Ping. With Xi's faction reportedly sidelined, there is growing speculation that he may step down. So how did it reach this point? Tang Jingyuan believes Xi's desire to preserve the CCP through rigid, regressive policies has backfired. Exiled scholar and former Peking University law professor Yuan Hongbing has also spoken out. In a recent interview, Yuan described several personal encounters with Xi in the early 2000s. According to him, during a private drinking session, Xi once remarked that China's population was too small to achieve global dominance, saying, "It takes 4 billion people to rule the world." In another incident, Xi reportedly argued with a local party secretary over the Korean War. The secretary criticized Mao Zedong's decision to send over 100,000 soldiers into freezing conditions without proper clothing during the Battle of Chosin Reservoir, calling it a reckless mistake. Xi defended Mao, reportedly stating that the losses were acceptable and included many soldiers who had previously served the Kuomintang. The disagreement turned physical, and Xi's opponent, Bi Ne, later faced serious legal consequences during Xi's anti-corruption campaign. Tang Jingyuan believes Xi's statements during those meetings, though casual, reflect a deep-rooted commitment to Marxist ideology and a belief in communism's global mission. After rising to absolute power, Xi worked to recast the Korean War as a patriotic victory, producing new films and narratives that reinforce the CCP's image. However, Tang concludes that Xi's approach, rooted in ideological rigidity and historical revisionism, ultimately weakened his position. Once seen as untouchable, Xi now appears increasingly vulnerable, isolated both within the party and in the eyes of the Chinese public. His rise was swift, but his grip on power may be slipping just as quickly. What happens next could mark a pivotal moment in China's political future. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in our next video.